Neighborhoods are supposed to be safe. Familiar streets, friendly faces, the comfort of routine. But sometimes, behind the quiet facades and white picket fences, something dark waits to be discovered. This is the story of 7 true neighborhood horror tales, starting with a night when I saw someone inside the dead man's house. The house had stood empty for years, an old Victorian on the edge of the block. It was the kind of place kids dared each other to approach, but never crossed the threshold. The owner, a reclusive man named Mr. Harper, had died suddenly. No family came forward, and the house just sat, windows boarded, grass overgrown. I never thought much about it until the night I saw the shadow. It was late October, the kind of night where the wind carries secrets. I was walking my dog past the house when a flicker of light caught my eye through a crack in the boards. At first I thought it was a trick of the street lamp, but then I saw the silhouette, tall, motionless, watching from inside. I froze, heart pounding. I called out, but there was no response. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished into the darkness. I told a few neighbors, but they just shook their heads. Some said the house was haunted. Others warned me not to go near it. But I couldn't let it go. The next day, I spoke with the property manager, who claimed the house had been secured. No one supposed to enter. But rumors spread. People disappearing, strange noises at night, glimpses of movement where there should be none. Weeks later, the police searched the house. What they found chilled the entire neighborhood. Inside a hidden room, they discovered belongings of missing persons. Clothes, personal items, even old phones. The air smelled of decay, and claw marks marred the walls as if someone had desperately tried to escape. Mr. Harper's house wasn't just empty, it was a trap. That night, I realized how little I really knew about the place I called home. And as I locked my door, I wondered, who else had been watching from the shadows? The next story happened just a few blocks over, in a quiet cul-de-sac where nothing ever seemed out of place. Except for the strange disappearance of Mrs. Whitaker's cat, Muffin. It was a small thing at first, just a missing pet. But then the neighbors started noticing odd smells around the alleys, something metallic and sharp, like old blood. And late at night, faint scratching sounds that no one could explain. One night, my friend Laura and I decided to check it out. We heard the noises ourselves, coming from behind an old garage at the end of the street. As we peered through the cracked door, we saw dozens of cages. Inside, wild animals. But not just wild. Sick, thin, desperate. And in one cage, a shape curled tightly. At first, we thought it was another animal, but then the figure moved. It was a man, barely conscious, with scratches all over his arms and face. We called the police immediately. It turned out a man who had lived in the neighborhood for years had been keeping people and animals captive in his garage. No one suspected him. He was quiet, kept to himself, the kind of guy you don't think twice about. The victims were rescued, but the neighborhood never felt quite the same after that. A few weeks later, my cousin Sarah told me about her experience living next to an abandoned house everyone called the dead man's house. No one knew much about it, except that it had been empty for years and that the previous owner had mysteriously died inside. The house was covered in peeling paint and boarded up windows, with weeds choking the yard. One evening, Sarah was walking her dog past the house when she caught a glimpse of a figure moving behind one of the dusty windows. She stopped dead in her tracks. The window had been boarded up for years. She called out, but no answer came. The figure vanished quickly. That night, Sarah's dog refused to go near the house and kept growling at the boarded window. The next day, curious and unsettled, Sarah asked the neighbors about it. They said that years ago, the owner was a recluse who'd passed away inside. And ever since, people reported strange lights and noises coming from the house, even though no one had lived there for a long time.
A few nights later, Sarah woke up to the sound of footsteps outside her window. At first, she thought it was just the wind, but then her dog started barking furiously. Peering through the curtains, she saw a shadowy figure standing right in front of the dead man's house. The figure didn't move for several minutes before disappearing into the darkness. She called the police, but when they arrived, the yard was empty. No footprints, no signs anyone had been there. The officers mentioned similar reports from other neighbors. Strange sightings, flickering lights, doors creaking open, but no concrete evidence. Curiosity got the better of Sarah, and one evening she decided to take a closer look at the house. Using a flashlight, she slipped through a broken side gate. The floorboards creaked under her feet as she stepped inside. Dust hung thick in the stale air, and the silence was suffocating. Then she saw it, a faint glow coming from the basement stairs. Hesitating, she descended and found a small room filled with old belongings. A dusty chair, a cracked mirror, and on the wall, strange symbols scratched into the plaster. Suddenly, she felt an icy breath on her neck and spun around. No one was there.
Joino, during thee, confidence ourself are too confidence to his vias.
Sarah bolted up the stairs, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Outside, the neighborhood was silent again, but that eerie feeling clung to her like a shadow. She knew she wasn't the only one drawn to that house. Over the next few days, she talked to neighbors who all shared similar stories. Unexplained noises, items mysteriously moving, and strange figures glimpsed in windows late at night. One older man told her about the previous owner, a recluse who vanished without a trace decades ago. Rumor had it he was involved in dark rituals, trying to communicate with something beyond. The house had been empty ever since, but no one dared stay for long. Determined to understand, Sarah started documenting everything: the strange sounds, the unexplained lights, even the odd sensations she felt whenever she was nearby. One night, as she recorded herself walking past the house, the camera caught a flicker, a pale face peering from behind a cracked window, watching her silently.
They scrambled up the stairs, hearts pounding, barely able to breathe. Once outside, the quiet street felt eerily unnatural, like the house had swallowed the night around it. Sarah knew something wasn't right. This wasn't just an abandoned home. It was a trap, a prison for something dark and restless. She started asking neighbors, piecing together a chilling history of the house's previous owners, disappearing without a trace, rumors of a curse whispered over decades. Days later, Sarah found an old newspaper clipping tucked inside a book she borrowed from the local library. The headline read, "Mysterious Death in Elm Street House. Owner found dead. No explanation." The article mentioned a man named Walter Griggs who died alone inside that very house, but neighbors had long suspected something more sinister. Sarah's unease only deepened when strange noises began echoing outside her own window at night, shadows flickering just beyond the porch light. One evening, she caught a glimpse of a figure watching her from the edge of the street, pale, motionless, just like the face in the video. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching her back, its presence seeping into her daily life. One night, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, she returned to the house, flashlight in hand. The front door creaked open easily, as if inviting her in. Inside, the air was thick and cold, heavy with dust and something far worse, the scent of decay. She stepped cautiously through the rooms, each filled with relics frozen in time. Furniture was covered in sheets, and old newspapers littered the floor, yellowed and brittle. At the back of the house, Sarah found a small door hidden behind a heavy curtain. It led down to a basement, where the darkness felt alive. The beam of her flashlight caught on something shiny, a rusted chain hanging from the wall, and on the floor, faint footprints that looked fresh. A sudden noise made her spin around. For a moment, she thought she saw a shadow dart across the far corner, then nothing. Heart racing, Sarah fled the house and didn't stop running until she was back on the brightly lit street. She reported her findings to the local police, but the house had been empty for years and no one took her seriously. Yet the neighborhood whispered, more people vanished, more strange figures were seen near the dead man's house. And Sarah, she never returned after that night.
A few weeks later, Sarah's friend Mark decided to investigate the house himself. He wasn't as easily scared and wanted to prove that nothing strange was happening. One afternoon, he set up a small camera outside the property, hoping to catch whatever it was that made the neighborhood so uneasy. That night, the camera recorded flickering lights inside the windows, though the house was supposed to be abandoned and unoccupied. The next morning, Mark watched the footage and saw a figure standing motionless at the window, pale, gaunt, and staring directly at the lens. It vanished when Mark zoomed in. Determined to get answers, Mark went to town hall and pulled the property's records. The previous owner was a man who disappeared without a trace years ago. The house was left untouched since then. But neighbors had reported strange noises and sightings, whispering voices, cold spots, and shadows moving just out of sight. Mark showed Sarah the footage, but that same night, he never came home. His phone was found on the porch of the dead man's house, screen cracked and dead. The police searched, but found no sign of him. The neighborhood fell into a deeper silence, as if the house claimed another secret. Months passed, and the house became a source of local legend. People warned newcomers to stay away. Then, one evening, a group of teenagers dared each other to enter the house. They slipped inside through a broken window, flashlights in hand, their laughter echoing nervously through the empty rooms. As they moved through the dusty halls, the temperature dropped sharply. One of them noticed faint footprints leading to the basement door, footprints that appeared fresh, as if someone had been there very recently. Their laughter died down. In the basement, they found old furniture covered in sheets and walls scrawled with strange symbols. The air felt thick, heavy with something unseen. Suddenly, a cold breath brushed past them, and the door slammed shut. Panic set in as they scrambled to open it, but it wouldn't budge. From the darkness, a whispering voice echoed,
"Why did you come?"
Why did you come?
The teens huddled together, heartbeats pounding, as a shadowy figure emerged, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They managed to force the door open and ran out into the night, never speaking of what they saw.
After that night, none of the teenagers wanted to talk about what happened. They drifted apart, their fear too real to share. Meanwhile, the house sat silently, watching over the neighborhood like a dormant beast waiting to awake again. One of the teens, curious and unable to forget, decided to investigate more. He dug into local records and found that the house once belonged to a recluse named Harold Granger, who had vanished without a trace decades ago. Rumors said he was involved in dark rituals, trying to communicate with the other side. The more he learned, the more unsettled he became. Neighbors reported seeing strange lights flickering in the windows at night, even though the house had been abandoned for years. Some claimed to hear muffled cries, like someone trapped inside. One stormy evening, the investigator returned to the house, alone, determined to find answers. As he stepped inside, the floorboards creaked beneath his feet, and the air was thick with a cold, unnatural presence. He felt eyes watching him, and the faint scent of decay lingered. He heard a soft, shuffling sound behind him. Turning quickly, he caught a glimpse of a pale figure disappearing down the hallway. Heart racing, he followed, but found only empty rooms. The house seemed to be alive, breathing with secrets it wasn't ready to share. He left that night, vowing never to return. But sometimes, late at night, he still hears a whisper on the wind, a warning or a plea, he's never sure. Years later, new owners bought the house, hoping to renovate and bring it back to life. They were unaware of the dark history and the warnings whispered by the locals. The renovations began smoothly, but soon, strange things started happening. Tools went missing, lights flickered inexplicably, and eerie footsteps echoed through empty hallways. One night, the family staying in the house woke to a chilling sight. A shadowy figure standing at the foot of their bed, motionless and staring. When they turned on the lights, no one was there, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Neighbors reported seeing flickering lights and hearing low, guttural noises after dark. The family tried to rationalize the events, blaming old wiring or the creaks of an aging home. But deep down, they knew something wasn't right. They called in paranormal investigators who set up cameras and sensors throughout the house. Reviewing the footage, they were horrified to find images of a gaunt man standing silently in the corners of rooms, sometimes inches from the cameras. The investigators felt an oppressive.
Since then, the house has remained vacant, a dark silhouette against the twilight sky. Locals say you can still see a figure standing at the window on certain nights, a silent guardian or a restless spirit trapped inside. People avoid walking by after dark, fearing the same fate might befall them. The house is a grim reminder that some places hold on to their secrets, and some stories never really end. If you ever hear footsteps or see a shadow inside an abandoned home, remember, sometimes what you see isn't just your imagination. It might be someone who never left.